You are standing on a beach in the Philippines, and the water is turning red. The year is 1521. A man named Ferdinand Magellan is on his knees in the surf, surrounded by warriors he underestimated. He will not survive this morning. And here is the strange part. History books will spend the next 500 years crediting this man with sailing around the world. He never did it. He did not even come close. The real story is far stranger than the one you were taught in school, and it involves a mutiny, a marooning, a nearly starved crew, and one captain nobody remembers who actually finished the job he started. Let's back up. In 1519, Ferdinand Magellan convinces the King of Spain, Charles I, to fund an expedition, not to sail around the world. That is not the plan. The plan is spices, cloves, nutmeg, pepper, the kind of cargo that turns a poor sailor into a rich one overnight. Portugal already controls the profitable eastern route to the Spice Islands, sailing around Africa and across the Indian Ocean. Magellan, who is Portuguese himself, but sailing under the Spanish flag now, proposes something nobody has ever proven possible. Sail west instead. Cross the Atlantic, find a passage through or around the unmapped landmass of the Americas. Cross an ocean nobody in Europe has measured and reach the Spice Islands from the opposite direction. If it works, Spain gets its own route to the richest trade on earth, without ever touching Portuguese waters. 5 ships leave Spain in September of that year. 270 men climb aboard. Almost none of them know what they are actually signing up for. Do you think any of them expected to be gone for 3 years? The first disaster happens before they even clear the Atlantic. Spanish captains under Magellan's command do not trust him. He is foreign, secretive about the route, and stubborn about sharing his charts even with his own officers. Off the coast of what is now Argentina, during a long, freezing winter spent waiting out storms, 3 of his own captains attempt a mutiny. Magellan crushes it without mercy. 1 captain is executed on the spot. Another is marooned on the empty coastline, left behind on a strange, unmapped continent to survive or die completely alone. This is not yet the heroic voyage of discovery you picture. This is a slow-motion crisis at the bottom of the world, and they have not even found the passage they came looking for. Then, in October 1520, they find it. A narrow, brutal channel near the southern tip of South America, later named the Strait of Magellan in his honor. It takes over a month to navigate through fog, freezing currents, and dead ends that look like open water until they aren't. 1 ship deserts in the strait and sails back to Spain in secret, its crew convinced the whole expedition is a death sentence. The remaining 3 ships push through into an ocean so calm after the violence of the strait that Magellan names it the Pacific, meaning peaceful. It turns out to be the emptiest, cruelest kind of peaceful anyone has ever sailed. They expect a short crossing, maybe a few days to the next known landmass. Instead, they sail for 98 days without finding land, without fresh water, without any relief at all. Men start dying of scurvy, a disease nobody on board yet understands. The ship's chronicler, an Italian nobleman named Antonio Pigafetta, writes it all down in real time, and his journal is the only reason we know most of this story in this much detail at all. He describes sailors eating sawdust just to fill their stomachs, eating leather straps softened for days in seawater, eating rats when they can catch them, and considering it a stroke of luck. Picture that. Weeks and weeks of open ocean, no rescue possible in any direction, watching your crewmates die one at a time from a disease with no known cause and no known cure. They finally sight land at Guam, then reach the Philippines in March of 1521. Here is where the story most people learned in school simply stops. Magellan makes an alliance with a local ruler on the island of Cebu. He wants converts to Christianity, and he wants to demonstrate Spanish military power to secure the alliance. On the neighboring island of Mactan, a local leader named Lapu-Lapu refuses to submit or convert. Magellan, against the direct advice of his own men, decides to force the issue by leading a landing party of roughly 60 soldiers himself. It is not a fair fight, but not in the way Magellan expects. Lapu-Lapu's warriors outnumber the landing party many times over, know the terrain, and wait until the tide leaves the Spanish ships too far offshore to support the attack with cannon fire. Magellan is struck down in the shallows on the morning of April 27, 1521, and dies right there on the beach. The fleet loses its commander less than halfway through a journey he is famous today for completing. So how did the ship still make it around the world if the man everyone remembers was already dead? This is the counterintuitive twist almost nobody teaches you. Command falls to the exhausted survivors, and the remaining fleet is a wreck of its former self. There are so few sailors left alive that they abandon and burn one entire ship simply because there is nobody to crew it. They finally reach the actual Spice Islands, load the holds with cloves, and now face the real problem nobody solved for them. They have to get all the way home, and Portugal controls or watches every known route back through the east. One ship, the Trinidad, attempts to cross the Pacific a second time to reach Spanish territory in Central America. It fails, is caught in the wrong currents, gets captured by Portuguese forces, and its surviving crew spends years in captivity before anyone sees Spain again. The other ship is the Victoria, and its new captain is a Basque navigator named Juan Sebastian Elcano, a man who had actually been part of that earlier mutiny attempt in Argentina and was pardoned rather than executed. Elcano decides on the only option left: keep sailing west, all the way around the southern tip of Africa, straight back through Portuguese-controlled waters, and simply hope nobody catches them along the way. They very nearly do not make it. Elcano has to leave crew members behind at a resupply stop in the Cape Verde Islands because there is not enough food or manpower to spare, and those men are seized by Portuguese authorities the moment they set foot on land. The Victoria limps into the harbor at Sanlúcar de Barrameda in September 1522, almost exactly 3 years after the fleet first departed Spain. Of the original 270 men who left on 5 ships, only 18 return home on that single surviving vessel. 18 out of 270. Some of those 18 are so weakened by the final stretch of the voyage that they can barely walk when they finally step onto Spanish soil. A few die within weeks of arriving home, their bodies simply unable to recover from 3 years of malnutrition, dysentery, and cold. The ship itself, the Victoria, is so battered by the journey that it is barely seaworthy by the time it reaches harbor, patched together with whatever the crew could scavenge along the way. What did the survivors even get for it? Elcano and his men are received by the king, given pensions, and treated as national heroes for a season. But the deeper prize, the one Spain actually wanted, is proof. Proof that the ocean connects, that a westward route to the Spice Islands genuinely exists, and that the earth can be circled by a determined enough crew willing to lose almost everyone to do it. Juan Sebastian Elcano, not Ferdinand Magellan, is the one who actually commands history's first successful circumnavigation of the globe. He receives a personal coat of arms from the Spanish king showing a globe circled by a Latin motto that translates roughly to, "You were the first to go around me." Not Magellan's name on that honor, Elcano's. So why does Magellan get all the credit centuries later? Partly because he conceived the entire expedition and pushed it further into the unknown than anyone had thought possible, right up until the moment he died. Partly because Pigafetta's journal, the single surviving detailed account most historians rely on, frames Magellan as its central figure for the long middle stretch of the story, since he commanded the fleet for most of the events worth writing down. And partly because history simply prefers a single hero to a complicated committee of half-dead survivors. It is easier to teach one recognizable name in a classroom than 18 scurvy-ridden sailors and the navigator who happened to be standing in charge when the ship finally limped into port. Here is the detail that almost nobody mentions, and it might be the strangest part of the entire voyage. When the survivors finally reached Spain, they discovered their own ship's log was off by 1 full day compared to the calendars waiting for them back home. They had crossed what we now call the international date line without knowing such a line existed, and their careful, disciplined daily records had quietly lost an entire day somewhere over the open Pacific. Nobody aboard had made an error. The planet itself had simply proven something true that no one yet had language for. Doesn't that still track with how discovery actually tends to work? Not one triumphant genius executing a flawless plan from start to finish. Stumbling, half-starved, largely accidental confirmation of something real, pieced together by whoever happened to survive long enough to carry the proof the rest of the way home. Think about how this entire 3-year catastrophe gets compressed into a single sentence in most textbooks. Magellan sailed around the world. That sentence erases a mutiny, an execution, a marooning 98 days of open ocean starvation, a death on a beach in the Philippines, an abandoned ship, imprisoned sailors, and a pardoned mutineer who finished a job that was never supposed to be his to finish. The tidy version of history almost always hides the version where things actually happened, one exhausting decision at a time, made by people who had no idea yet whether any of it would work. You have probably watched your own understanding of some achievement, in your own life or in your own work, get flattened the same way. A clean story forms around one name. One moment, one finish line, while the actual effort that got the mission home was carried by whoever was still standing at the very end, doing a job nobody originally assigned to them, on the last and hardest stretch of a journey somebody else had started and could not finish. You are still standing on that beach in the Philippines, and the water is still turning red. Only now you know the ship does not stop here. It sails on, without the man everyone will remember, carried the rest of the way around the world by a name almost nobody does.